And now I would like to ask Yener Güreş, who is the head of Turkish Construction Steelworking Association, TUKSA, and he will have the first presentation about the solutions and the problems during the disasters in Turkey in the last year. So Yener, stage is yours.
Thank you, Eccs. I'd like to give some information about the earthquake we suffered in Turkey. But before, I would like to introduce myself. I'm the president of Turkish Construction Steelwork Association, and I'm working with the Eccs since 2004. I mean, it means for 20 years. Now, indeed, I will mention about earthquakes in Turkey at the beginning. Within last century, we encountered with many earthquakes. However, 3 of them were huge. One of them was occurred in 1939. We lost about 33,000 people. But in comparison with our population, it's serious. The second big one, 17 August 1999, you may remember. And also we suffered, I mean, we lost more than 18,000 people in this earthquake. And the third one, we suffered last year on the 6th of February. Also, we lost about 55,000 people. Now, today, I will mention about the earthquake occurred in the 6th of February. This one, just excuse me, this one hit 11 countries on the eastern south of part of Turkey, particularly in Kahramanmaraş and close to this area, Hatay. It was interesting because within same day, between 2 hours different, 2 earthquakes occurred in this area, and it was very huge. In addition, although I will not mention about this one later on, this is more than we expected in accordance with our scientific inputs. Okay. Within this area, 82% of buildings were reinforced concrete in general. But when we return back to, when we turn to residential buildings, it was 95% of all buildings. Precast buildings also was serious, and 3.6%, but for buildings, residential buildings, it was 0.6%. Stone and masonry buildings was not so much. Steel buildings, very few. In general, it was 2.4%, and for residential buildings, it was 0.4%, unfortunately. These 3 buildings were, were not damaged. It was very strong. Other buildings also not so much. Losses during the earthquake in this area, in accordance with official figures, were 55,000 people died, and 518,000 buildings were collapsed or heavily damaged, which is 9.2% of all buildings. 131 and 500 buildings has medium level damage, and 1,279,000 and let's say 1,280,000 buildings were slightly damaged. Instead, no steel structure collapsed. 3 residential buildings, steel buildings, were heavily damaged. I will mention later on. Industrial steel buildings performed very well performance. And turning to performances of structures, reinforced concrete buildings, I mean, seriously collapsed or damaged, as you see here. Prefabricated buildings, connection points were weak and they collapsed as well. In addition, most of industrial small buildings were constructed by using fabricated, precast buildings, prefabric buildings. So almost all of them were collapsed or heavily damaged. Stone and masonry buildings also, encounter with some problems. Masonry buildings as well. Yeah. In different styles. Timber buildings, they were strong. However, roofs, particularly roof of the buildings, were collapsed if the walls were stone or concrete. Very few rock-carved structures existed, and no failure is reported in rock-carved structures. But there's a town, Erzin town in Hatay, which is the most affected area from the earthquake. No building collapsed. It was very interesting because the mayor did not allow any illegal structures and enforced the implementation of buildings in accordance with the standards. Therefore, they were not collapsed. Turning to steel buildings, there were 3 steel structured buildings there. These buildings on the left side were constructed in 2000. After 2000, one of our members constructed that one. After the earthquake on 6th February, they have been reported as heavily damaged. But as you see here, it was very easy and it was very possible to leave the buildings safely. But after this one, on the 20th of February, another earthquake occurred in this area, very close to this place. And one of these buildings were damaged very seriously, probably due to ground problems. However, it has not been collapsed, as you see here, because it's still. But in this area, industrial buildings, when we go there, we realize that, we observed that industrial buildings were very strong. Although some of them suffered some damages, however, it was very easy to replace these, load-bearing elements of the building. Therefore, this provided 2 advantages. One of them, economy restart very soon in comparison with other concrete buildings, because in concrete buildings, if one column is crashed, in this case, all activities are stopped and the building would have to be collapsed. But steel buildings, it's different. On the other hand, if you start the economy in an earthquake area, it's very important for people living in this area. That's why, I mean, particularly industrial buildings, I will mention later, but we recommended to construct all industrial buildings made up of steel. Some development, I mean, mention about some developments after earthquake in Turkey. I'm saying Turkey because you may not be familiar with this word so much because Turkish government requested United Nations to change the name as Turkey because normally we are using Turkey, not Turkey. However, I mean, if you use both of them, I mean, I can understand, no problem. Corrective activities such as rescue, shelter, and meals and beverage, health and hygiene, transportation and logistics, security, burial, and similar operations have been carried out just after the earthquake. I mean, many people involved into these activities, personally and also governmental bodies. However, I mean, for us, preventive activities is also very important. I mean, if I may say, extremely important. And because in order not to lose life of 10,000s of people, to prevent the collapse of hundred thousands of buildings, and to avoid economic losses of $100 billion as experienced before, we have to have preventive activities. For the following earthquakes, we believe that governmental bodies and universities will continue to work on this topic by producing strategic solutions. But if I have to confess that we experienced 3 times so big earthquakes in Turkey within last century. I hope this time we can learn something from this earthquake. For this one, I mean, just after the earthquake, Ministry of Environment, Urbanization and Climate Change requested Turkish Construction Steelwork Association, first time, to inspect and classify the damages for steel structures in earthquake region. We received this message on the 29th of March. Yeah, almost more than 1.5 months later. However, it was the first time, it was very important because we gained, I mean, we experienced many things during this determination and also classification, inspection. And TUCSA, Turkish Construction Steelwork Association, established teams for inspection and classifications of damages for steel structures. Since the number of steel structures were not so much, it was not so difficult, but it was very important. We observed very clearly that steel buildings were safer than other types of buildings. Because as I said before, let's say about 200,000 buildings were collapsed. No steel structures was collapsed. Therefore, to increase the use of steel structures in Turkey, TUCSA achieved an online summer school of 60 hours for steel construction between September, I mean, 3 weeks in September and October, with the participation of 1,031 students, architects and engineers. It was very important because in Turkey, unfortunately, steel structures were not used so much because there were not enough architects and engineers in governmental bodies, mayors, I mean, in everywhere. TUCSA is trying to convince the governmental bodies to make some official regulation, such as to make mandatory to construct industrial buildings in steel, in seismic zones. All buildings within a certain distance from fault lines must be steel, etc. Because we believe that really, I mean, maybe 5 kilometers from the zone, I mean, fault line, or different distances can be determined scientifically. But within this zone, within this line, all buildings must be steel, we believe. TUCSA is planning to hold earthquake-resistant construction summit in Ankara in the second half of September, because we have to explain, I mean, governmental bodies are willing to construct steel. However, unfortunately, they do not know very well how they are going to do and what they are going to do. Therefore, I mean, this summit is very important. We will try to explain what they should do, if I may say. In addition, World Steel Association Construct Steel will meet in Istanbul on the 29th and 30th of April for plenary meeting and to discuss the role of steel solutions in disaster prevention and restoration with the participation of high-level governmental officers from Turkey. Naturally, I mean, we will take part in. Turning to lessons learned, inspection and classification of damages for steel structures in earthquake region. The existing Turkish rules to inspect and classify the damages had been prepared for reinforced concrete, precast concrete, and masonry buildings, but not for steel structures. I mean, when we have been tasked, we tried to look at the regulations on this matter, and we realized that there was nothing for steel structures. And we reported to the ministry. Later on, TUCSA was requested to draft a regulation for inspection and classification of damages of steel structures and repair of them. It has been being prepared by using FEMA 352. Indeed, we look at also European standards and European regulations, but unfortunately, also in Europe, we couldn't see so much information. We believe that, I mean, a similar regulation can be prepared for Europe as well. It can be considered by Eccs Seismic Design Technical Committee, I believe. It's so important to be ready to establish earthquake damage inspection and classification teams in advance, because after the, I mean, also in 1999 and last year, governmental bodies are requesting engineers to go to earthquake area and to check the situation, I mean, buildings. Instead, we started to prepare our teams for next earthquakes. One of the most important features of steel structures is that their load-bearing elements can be replaced and reinforced very fast. Indeed, it's very obvious. Therefore, we did not think about it before. It's natural. However, in this earthquake, we saw that it's really very important, because for concrete buildings, you cannot change columns, beams easily. However, for steel structures, it can be done. That's why almost all industrial buildings must be constructed by using steel. Also, excuse me, no, okay, sorry. Steel temporary bridges for damaged roads can be used, because some roads after this and last year's earthquake have been destroyed, as you see on the screen. It's better to consider the use of steel temporary bridges, not only for the damaged, collapsed bridges, but also for some other infrastructures repairs, such as the damaged roads. I mean, okay. Regulation for inspection and classification of damages of steel structures. TUCSA recommends ECCS Seismic Design Technical Committee to consider to prepare a regulation or guidance document on inspection and classification on damages of steel structures for Europe, which can be discussed also in below mentioned conference. The third proposal for earthquake conference, in turn, I will reiterate because maybe you remember in 2012, we recommended to organize a conference in turn, but later on last year in Amsterdam, we said one more time that earthquake conference series can be organized by high seismic risk countries of Europe, such as Portugal, Italy, Greece, Turkey, and Romania. These countries may organize these conferences in turn every 2 years. It can be discussed, naturally, under the coordination of TC13 Seismic Design Committee, should it be accepted by ECCS. If this proposal is accepted, TUCSA is ready to organize the mentioned conference in 2025 autumn or 2026 spring in coordination with Yeditepe University. Okay. Yeah, quite good. Time is okay, I believe. Thank you very much. You listened to my presentation with patience.
Thank you very much, Yener.